Hey everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and happy Sunday, November 3rd of 2024. 2 more days until we have the elections here in the US, and if you're watching this after November 5th, then we're out the other side. So let's all take a nice deep breath, stay in our calm, happy, loving space that is our divine spark, and carry on from here, right? So, to say my week was busy is a massive understatement. I'm sure for you as well. Many of you out there have these just crazy busy human lives that sometimes I go, I need a break. So, this was one of those weeks for me, and I started off the week in my journal with some of the similar thoughts that I've been thinking and working on through my mind and talking with other people about the whole purpose of why we're here, right? And so what I wrote is getting to the core of who we are. You know, it seems like this is the search of humankind, and here's what I wrote. Drilling down to the truth of it, basically. So it actually made me think of this. Is there any joy in knowing? And where is the joy in knowing who we are, why we're here, and what is our purpose? I guess when you learn new truths and you start to look at life differently than outside of the programs and the programming and all the propaganda and all of that, when you really release yourself from that, to say the joy diminishes because these truths are so hard to absorb into this beautiful consciousness that we are, is an understatement. Because it's like, oh, everything that I believed and held dear doesn't appear to be true. So it's the whole age-old question of humanity. Who are we? Why are we here? What's our purpose? These are all really deep questions that I think is a continual thing for seekers. And I think every human being is a seeker of some sort. You might not seek on a super deep level. And my goal really, I think, just kind of talking myself through this first part of what I journaled this week, is that I would like to find the joy in the seeking. And there has been moments of that. And like big moments, if I'm really being honest and I really think about it. There's when a new epiphany comes aboard, I talk to somebody that opens my mindset and a truth drops in. I have a ton of joy when I'm really feeling some of these truth bombs, and it actually makes the darker stuff seem so much less dark, because then this truth, this deep truth of who we really are that we think so hard about, and we let someone else's worldview rock our world and give us doubts about what we might be learning or finding out. That might be one of the biggest things right there, is we can drop into this knowing of who we are as this divine spark of pure love, pure consciousness, pure source creation. We're here to have an experience, and we don't want to keep coming back into this trap, this reality that keeps us in lower emotions, keeps us in grief and sadness and fear and anger and rage and all of that stuff. And then we might have a conversation with somebody, and their argument sounds really convincing, and then we start to second guess these knowings. And where I am right now is I've actually moved very, very far past that. I have a really deep knowing of the fact that I am a divine spark of pure consciousness. That's it. I don't have to figure out what my purpose is. Who am I? And so I think maybe I'm talking myself through this, finding the joy in finding out who we are to the core of us. This is just an age-old question. And it's been an interesting week because every person that I would consider a friend, or even someone that I see on a regular basis, and one of those people is my hairdresser. Every single person, and I've been seeing him for 15, 17 years, something like that. So he's a very dear friend at this point. But every single person that I had an opportunity to even have a short conversation with, I would open up the topic of jumping off the reincarnation wheel and the idea that we are already perfect the way we are. And why do we need to learn lessons and have all this suffering? And some of the people that I talked to, you could see different emotions that ranged from a little bit of panic. One really good friend follows Buddhism, and that is just a deep, deep belief for him and has been for decades. And when I really described from what I am feeling and what I've been studying, why that feels true to me, why we don't have to, I don't feel like we should have to come down and learn lessons because we're already perfect. And I watched a little tiny bit of panic in his eyes flicker. And then I watched him recalibrate, bring himself right back, and then explain to me why the Buddhist way is, why it is why it's the truth. And I realized that, I'm not here to talk anyone out of their belief system. I'm here to find what resonates with me. And also, I think this is maybe where the joy is, right? Where you can actually have a conversation with someone, not trying to change their mind, but maybe just expand their mind. And if they're not able to hear it or absorb it or contemplate it even, and you can literally see that, then it's just like, okay, it's an interesting perspective, right? So you get to me, I'm not here to convince anyone. And that is really such a beautiful place to be. It's the same thing like with politics. I'm not here to convince anyone to vote a certain way. I'm going to let people make up their own decisions. And if someone wants to engage me in a conversation, I'd be happy to engage. And then if we find we disagree, we're maybe not only going to vote for someone else different in whatever different categories, that's okay. I'm not here to try to convince anyone. And it's been interesting because just this last week with the election so close, I've talked to a couple people who are being pressured to vote a certain way because the other person feels so desperate that if their candidate doesn't get in, there's a desperation. And it's just so fascinating, right? So as I was contemplating all of these things, as far as, getting to the core of who we are, and is there a joy in knowing, and maybe along the path of knowing. I do think, as I'm saying this, yes, there's a joy in knowing, because then you can walk through this life without all the angst and trouble, at least of knowing who you are. That kind of releases everything else, and you get to make different decisions based on that. So as I was really thinking about that and writing this down, because I'm typically in a quiet place when I have my journal. I've got my journal right here. You can see tons of notes there. But I usually just sit. I'm in a really quiet place. I have this big, comfy love seat I sit in with my pen. And as I was writing this, and I actually got a little bit emotional, because at the moment I was writing, life felt a little hard for me. A lot of things happened this week. Our new website went live. There's glitches still, which is normal. And we had to get a new website because we got a little bit taken advantage of by the last person who did our website, but that's a whole nother story. But I had this moment where I was feeling emotional, but partly I was feeling a little bit sorry for myself. Like kind of last week, I had the same thing. And as I reached up to kind of just kind of wipe my eye. I've been spending the whole last week, probably week and a half. I have a huge home apothecary. I have a whole bunch of tinctures with, probably 100 different herbs that are curing in tinctures. And then I mix them into their own unique formulas and sometimes by singles, and I share them with my family. And I spent a good chunk of the week, and even that day, filtering a whole bunch of herbs. And I got a whiff that sinks into the skin of my hands, that when I'm doing this filtering. And it brought me such a rush of joy, because when I am filtering these herbs, I'm to a point where I can just simply smell an herb and I know what it is. And with a lot, like burdock and turkey rhubarb and slippery elm and chaparral and all of these herbs, osha root, mullein, lobelia, like all of these herbs, as I'm filtering them, it brings me a lot of joy. And a lot too, because I know that this is something I feel so grateful that I can provide these for my family on this level, and they can just bring me an empty bottle and I can fill it up out of my home mix. If they are dealing with a certain issue, I can say, okay, let me make you your own special blend. And it's really, really, really fun to do. So this is what I wrote. As I was contemplating this, I got a little teary-eyed and wiped my eye and got a smell of my hands, covered in the rich smell of herbs from today. Because all week I spent working on my at-home herbal tincture filtering. And I thought, yeah, okay, that's a simple joy. That is so joyful to me. And I'm sure that many of you that have things that you do that are comparable. Maybe you're an artist and you paint, and you might see you have a favorite shirt you wear when you're painting, or maybe you got a bit of paint on the sleeve of a shirt that you love, but you still wear it and it has a little bit of paint there, and it brings you a smile when you see it. So I think that we all have these things that bring us joy if we really stop to think about it. So here's the next question I ask myself. How do we stop being curious to the point of mental torture? I am insatiable in my curiosity on why we're here, who we are, what's our purpose. Like, I feel like I have this insatiable curiosity. And while I do think it's a very good, healthy thing, and I don't ever want to stop being that, I need to get to this point where I don't give myself mental torture over some of these things that I'm just so curious about. I think this boils down to the whole thing of we need to know. We want to know. What is it? We want to have, imagine, if you had an absolute certainty on what's going to happen in the election, an absolute certainty. What would you do differently? How would you behave differently? How would you think differently? Would you sleep better if you knew, especially if it went in the favor that you wanted to go? And here's the thing that we need to realize. There's never certainty in this particular dense planet that is Earth, and in this construct that we are in, because I believe we are in a reality. I believe in a simulation. I think we're in a construct of a lot of things that aren't real, that we've been lied to about. I believe all of that. So because we know that things are uncertain and we can't predict the outcome, why don't we just release ourselves from the mental torture, right? So then I said, maybe we're not supposed to stop. Maybe we're not supposed to stop being curious. I actually think that's, part of it. So then I wrote, is it part of the fun of being here? Can we look at it instead of emotional trauma or emotional mental torture? Can we look at it as part of the fun? And then I wrote, is this why so many stay unaware, asleep, uncurious, numbed out, blissed out, or addicted? It makes me wonder, is it so painful for some people to be so uncurious, or to be so curious that they now are not curious and they become addicted? we become addicted to so many things, sugar, alcohol, marijuana, our technology, watching movies, exercise. People get addicted to working out all the time, where it's just an obsession. We just get these addictions and they make us numbed out. They keep us unaware. And this is just a part of finding balance and just realizing some deep truth. So let me read that again. So the first part was, how do we stop being curious to the point of mental torture? Maybe we're not supposed to stop. Is it part of the fun of being here? So that's a good question, right? Is it part of the fun? And how can we swap out life is so hard to life is so fun? Even when there's something hard, is it really? If you change your perspective, then life changes. You could have exactly the same things happening. It's exactly like if someone cut you off in traffic. If you can choose to look at it from two completely different perspectives. Thank heavens nothing happened. Oh, that person, I hope they're okay. I'm really glad nothing happened. Or you could be completely angry. It could make you grateful that you pay attention, that you watch and you're careful when you drive. You could move into a place of gratitude rather than a place of anger. So you could take exactly the same situation in anything in your life that happens, no matter how hard. And you could actually change your perspective, and then the whole situation changes. That's pretty wonderful. So then, again, is this why so many people stay unaware, asleep, uncurious, numbed out, blissed out, or addicted? And I wrote blissed out because I actually have a couple of friends that's what they do. And I say blissed out meaning they do a lot of plant medicine and they do a lot of journeys. They spend hours and hours a day in meditation, like 6 hours a day sometimes, simply because that numbs them out. And maybe there's nothing wrong with that. I am not judging anything, but to me that felt like it's the same, almost the same thing. That also can become an addiction, because I do believe we're here to have fun. And that might be the core of who we are, is to be joyful and to have fun. So then I wrote this: maybe we need to go back to the little things and the simple pleasures. We're so used to that dopamine hit from our phone, from the TV, from eating something sugary. We're so used to those hits of dopamine that our poor brain and our poor hormones are just always just firing, because it's expecting it, and we're expecting that dopamine hit, that rush. So I wrote down these are some of my favorite things: a really good book, and not just fiction, and not just nonfiction. I tend to read a lot more nonfiction than I do fiction, and I have to remind myself, sometimes I need to pick up a big, juicy novel, and I need to just absorb myself in the story and sit and read. And I actually do this on a fairly regular basis because I really, really, really enjoy it. And I especially enjoy it in two particular parts of the year, which is in the summer when it's warm outside. I can sit in the sun or underneath the shade of an umbrella, or in the winter when I'm cozied up by the fire and I can just sit for hours on a Saturday and just read all day. Now, I don't do that very often, but I need to, because there is a ton of joy in just simply reading a really good book, right? A cup of coffee or tea, that's a simple pleasure. A day with nothing on the schedule. Now, does that sound like a luxury? But could you make it happen? You might still need to take care of your kids, or you might need to take care of some responsibilities, but that to me is a simple pleasure. And extend time, stretch time. give yourself a day where you just get to be. You get to be and do whatever you want without distractions. And then I wrote being unreachable. There is a beautiful freedom in being unreachable. I'm in that age category way before cell phones. And I'm grateful for that, because being unreachable is such a gift. And I do this on a regular basis when I go on my walks. I don't do it all the time. If I'm listening to something really good on either a podcast or an Audible, a book that I'm really enjoying, I'll go on my 5-mile walk, and I will not bring my technology. And I feel like that's a simple pleasure when no one can reach me, even if it's just for an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes. There is a simple pleasure in that. So being unreachable, and then I wrote being untraceable, because I feel the heaviness of what I feel like is the beginning of a severe state of surveillance on us in the Western world here. And I know it's already happening in places like China. I know that they're under surveillance in everything that they do. And, to me, that's a simple pleasure, is feeling unreachable and untraceable. Being spontaneous is a simple pleasure. Say yes to something that if someone throws something out. There's a really great movie called Yes Man that came out a long time ago with Jim Carrey, and he gets a spell put on him where he has to say yes to everything. And it completely changes his life. And I'm not saying you need to do that, but I'm saying be spontaneous. If an opportunity shows up, you might have to get uncomfortable. You might be settled in for the evening, and you have to even, maybe you might be in your pajamas and you're sitting in front of the fire, or you've just got done eating a meal and you're not in the mood. If someone, says, hey, let's go do this, or come watch a movie with me, or hey, you want to walk around the block with me? You might have to get dressed and put your shoes on and put your jacket on. But I would be willing to bet that you would have a phenomenal experience if you started becoming more spontaneous with these things. That's one thing I've always loved to do, is as much as I can say yes. And especially when my first inclination is to say no, right? And then I wrote just being. So being unreachable, being untraceable, being spontaneous, and then I thought just being. Just be. And I catch myself in intense situations where, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but we've got a little construction project going on in our warehouse, and I let myself get a little bit carried away because it feels like there's too many fingers in the pot of people who are making decisions, and I have been feeling kind of like the ultimate decision for certain things that need to happen with this need to come to me, because I'm the one that's financially responsible, and it's my business and all of this. And I had a moment this past week on Friday where I was overreacting, and where you are in the middle of a situation and you realize, oh, I need to rein this back, but you feel like you've already jumped off a cliff, and you see the ledge back there, and you wish you could just get back on the ledge, but you're already off. I had this surreal moment where that was exactly where I was, and it's like, how do you rein that in? So it made me write that piece down of just being, because I need to remember in the moment when things get intense and I feel like it's out of control, or I'm not. I will admit I can be a control freak. I want to know what's going on, where it is going on, how much is it going to cost. That's just the way my brain works. And I find myself getting worked up before I maybe hear all the information, or before I listen to everyone's side. It's a very interesting place to be. So then I wrote just being. How about if we just be? Gather all the information first, and then still just be for a second. Sit with it for a second. I think I'm so guilty of this. We respond and we react so fast without really thinking about things. So, bring it back to simplicity. The simple pleasures, the simple stuff. And it can include all this stuff too. And I say all these things because I am the 100% in this, doing these things and being a crazy person sometimes, right? So we need to remember, we need to constantly remind ourselves that we are a divine spark of consciousness, creation, God, and pure love. This is something that is said all the time, but we need to be in a constant state of remembering. And then we can actually let that sink in. It'll eventually sink in. And then we'll just be in a state of being. And we can still take care of all the things we need to take care of on this beautiful planet, in this beautiful lifetime. We can still take care of all of those things. So we need to remember, constantly reminding ourselves that we are a divine spark of consciousness, creation, God, and pure love. And that it's really that simple. It's really that simple. Getting to the core of who we are, why we're here, and what our purpose is. It's really that simple. We get to complicate it, don't we? I really actually, as I talk myself through some of these notes and these journaling thoughts, I really have to chuckle at myself, because I know that everything that I let define me, I'm an herbalist, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a grandmother, I'm a hiker, all these things that I let define me are, in all honesty, not really me. They're not, they're this avatar that is named Jane, that is walking through this lifetime, staying as curious as I can. And it almost makes me just laugh at myself for the angst that I cause myself when I really talk myself through these things like this. It's just so interesting. I would love to know if you can relate to any of this on any level. Because as I talk myself through it, I just have to go, okay, yeah. That sounds really, really good. Like that really lands. That lands right here in my heart. And it's interesting when it lands more in your heart than landing in your mind or in your head. When it lands in your heart, you say, yeah, okay. I need to kind of get out of my own way. I need to realize the truth and the beauty of who I really am. So what do you guys think about that? Interesting stuff, right? I as I write these notes and then I turn on my camera, I always wonder, what's gonna flow out as I'm talking myself through my journaling notes from the week. And I will say, sometimes I'm really pleasantly surprised, because I feel like, okay, I just got to figure some stuff out that's going to help me along this journey. And I always hope that someone who's listening to this can, go, oh, that really makes sense to me. And that helps me today. So thank you guys for being here. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your Sunday. If you're watching this after the election, the sun still came up, right? You still have your family members to love. And, I know this life is finite and we're all mortal, and maybe something did change for you. But I'm sending you lots of love. I hope you have an absolutely beautiful week, and we'll see you next time.